right, I guess we're going to get started now. It's about 2:35. So again, thank you for coming. This is going to be obviously concept-based curriculum instruction. It's an overview. We do not anticipate or expect that anyone in this room has to become an expert in an hour and a half professional development session. Joanna and I, for example, we actually did was it 5 days?
Yeah.
5-day training, full days every single day, about 9 years ago at this point. No, 8 years ago. 8 years ago at this point. So that we could be certified to train everybody in Stratford, along with Dr. Gata.
That's right, that was where we first met.
That's right, as certified trainers. I am Harold Grice. As many of you know, I am the secondary math and science coordinator. I will be transitioning to a different role on July 1st, but still am in this position right now. And I think everybody knows Joanna has worn many different hats and different roles in this district, and currently is the coordinator of counseling, 504, and assessments, right? So we hope that you guys have an enjoyable time. We're going to be learning by doing. We'll be stopping from time to time and giving you some time for some think time. We'll also be trying to model some of the concept-based curriculum as we go through it. And then, of course, we will have our next session in 10 days, I think it is. And that time we will be at Bunnell. So to make it even and fair, so for one day, one group travels, the other day, the other group travels. So without further ado, Joanne, you want to take over?
Thank you, Harold. So we want to start with why do we need concept-based curriculum and instruction? And for us, that why is part of the Stratford Portrait of a Graduate. And so over these next 3 slides, there's a smaller version, but Harold is actually passing out for you a paper copy because it's always easier to see that right in front of you. But as a community, so parents, teachers, students, administrators, business members, community members, daycare providers, higher education professionals, we said this is what we want our Stratford students to be able to be. We said we want them to be communicators, collaborators, lifelong learners, compassionate and engaged community members, and solution-driven problem solvers. So in order for students to become these, we need a way to bring them there through our curriculum. And that's where concept-based curriculum comes in, because we're teaching kids to make connections, to not just stay in time and place, but to look at how all the things they're learning transfer. As we do this work, you're going to be embedding the portrait qualities into the curriculum. So that is going to be part of the work for the curriculum writing. And so again, we started with that because I think it's important to have everyone understand that this is really our why as a district. And as Harold just pointed out, there's some copies for you because these are kind of small to read. So we are looking at what is concept-based curriculum and instruction, and really right now we're focusing how is it different from traditional topic or skill-based curriculum. So one of the things you may notice is that we start all of our work with questions. The questions are invitations. It's how we get students to focus and to learn. And so instead of writing objectives, we turn those objectives into questions because it activates students' brains. It asks them to think about what might the answer be. Rather than just saying, this is what you're going to learn. Your objective, your goal is still listed, it's just listed in the form of a question, again, which is seen as an invitation to students. In a traditional kind of curriculum, you're really just focused on the topic and content. And, we've seen this. So early European migration, the indigenous peoples of Australia, the Irish potato famine, Shakespeare, British literature. These are all interesting and meaningful. They're really interesting topics, but they're locked in time, space, and place. So they don't have, how do they expand? How do we see the connections beyond this one moment? That's what concept-based curriculum and instruction is really about. Looking at it kind of another way, this is just a visual representation, and you'll see that sometimes when we offer things, we offer them in a couple of different ways. So the first one is just the topic and the skills, but again, we take those topic and skills, it's not the skills, those facts, they're important, but we combine them with concepts and we turn them into generalizations. So all of that builds together. And we actually, even though we write them, some of this information into our curriculum, We actually ask students to do that work as we're teaching them. We ask students to make that transfer. So all of these building blocks are put together, and students are learning how to do this themselves. Put another way, two-dimensional, it's coverage, it's sort of shallow, it doesn't transfer, and it, we talked about the 21st century, Lois Landing and Lynn Erickson, who are actually the people who trained Harold and I and Dr. Gata. They're the ones who have developed this, and they said, they're saying, this is their wording. Concept-based is three-dimensional, it's idea-centered. The idea is for it to be intellectually deep, I've said before, to have transfer, and the goal is we want students to handle increased complexity and change. I think we can all see where that would be relevant today. We want students to know and to understand. They have to know, it's not that we get rid of any factual knowledge. That's important. You need that knowledge, you need that basic information in order to be able to understand, in order to transfer it to something that goes across time, space, cultures, and situations. So sometimes people get confused and think, oh, concept-based curriculum, we're just getting rid of all the facts. No, they still exist, they're still important, but you use that knowledge and you use it to make a bigger, to show a bigger understanding. I'm going to turn it over to Harold.
Thanks, Joanna. I forgot to say during the introduction that we were actually really excited to work with this group because I think that if there's any educational group or department in Stratford that really can latch on to this idea of conceptual understanding and doing and going beyond the facts, I would say I see it every day in your classrooms in CTE. Not every day, I'm not in your classrooms every day, but I get the point. So this is kind of exciting about that part. So as we're going through this, I want you to think about your curriculum and your curricular areas and how this might apply, right? And how these takeaways might go in, because I know as Dr. Gata is putting together a lot of curriculum writing projects coming up, this is the sort of thing that'll kind of fuel into that. And I forgot to say earlier that we are having an hour-and-a-half session today. It's going to be a little bit of homework, although we're going to give time at the end to work on it. And then there's an hour-and-a-half session in 10 days, and then Joanne and I have each planned and worked with Dr. Gata and Kevin Clemmy that will also be available for several hours for like one-on-one or small group, depending on how your team is working. So just to let you know, there's support beyond just these sessions, so because it's a lot to take in at once. All right, for this next part, we're going to talk a little bit about the structures of two things, and you can see by the questions or the previews, we're going to look at the structure of knowledge, which applies very heavily to I think most content areas, and then we have the structure of process, which Joanna will be leading you through, which is a little bit more nuanced and got its roots in the English language arts area, but certainly could be applied to other areas. Just thinking back to the piece before about three-dimensional versus two-dimensional, it had me thinking about culinary in my mind, is that two-dimensional learning is like the kid can follow the recipe, but three-dimensional learning is they can figure out a recipe, right? They can understand the techniques and things and go beyond that. So the structure of knowledge was, I don't want to say invented, but put forward by Lynn Erickson. This book, Transition into Concept-Based Curriculum and Instruction, we put in the order several weeks ago, but only one copy has made it in at this point. And I think Joanna has planned to raffle it off or something by the end of the session. All of you will be getting a copy of this book, as well as one other book, but this is sort of like the basis of everything in concept-based curriculum. So especially for reference, you'll have it. We just wanted to make sure you know that. This is where these ideas come from. So all of this work really is the brainchild of Lynn Erickson and her many years working with teachers, with administrators, with curriculum experts, and that's what we're going to go through now. So we're going to start by, again, giving examples before we give definition. That's what I always work with on math and science teachers. It's good pedagogy to give you something to conceptually grab onto before you get the definition of a word that doesn't necessarily match what you know it as. So we're going to do that by looking at first this diagram, which is a visual representation of how the different pieces come together. And then we're going to look at a few concrete examples. I think we're actually going to go through 3 of them. And then I'm going to have you think about in your own words what they mean to you. So I think the easiest way to go through this diagram is to talk about it in practical terms. And this is not a hard and fast rule. You don't have to do it in this order all the time. It sort of depends on the situation. But in general, when you're starting to learn about it, you not always, but you generally start at the topic level. So in this example, we're going to say that the topic we're going to look at is principles of engine operation. Okay. And that, I'm sure you can imagine, in standard curriculum, in CTE courses that do deal with small engines or large engines, are going to have that as a topic. You know, how does an engine work? What do the different various parts do? And then, of course, standard, after you come up with the topic, typical curriculum writing would be then, okay, well, what are all the things we want students to know about, right? That would be down at the facts level. So, and this is just examples. This is not intended to be the full compendium of all the information they would need to know. And full disclosure, Joanna and I normally, when these examples we put up examples for art, I'm sorry, not for art, for you know, science, for math, for social studies, for English, topics that are like in our direct domain and wheelhouse. But for this purposes, we tried to sort of make it more in the CTE realm to make it a little bit easier to grab onto. So if we got anything wrong, we apologize for that. So start with the topic, then we go to the facts and understandings. And as a 2-dimensional curriculum would, in essence, stop there. You'd say, well, this is all the things the kid needs to know. Now let's develop an assessment. It might even be a hands-on assessment. It might be a written assessment, but they have to demonstrate knowledge of these things. With concept-based curriculums, you want to rise up to the next level. And we're not going to define concepts yet. What I'd like you to do is take a look at the concepts that appear on the next 3 slides as we go through them. And in your own mind, as you're looking at that, start to think about how the concepts differentiate themselves from the facts and the topic itself. So in this example, some examples of concepts that would go into this unit topic, principles of engine operation, could be energy, work, power, and systems. And the idea, so I'm trying not to give away too much, right? The idea of the generalization is, look at that, it's almost like we plan to have this here. We have an essential question hung up, and I'm sure those of you that were working in Stratford prior to, well, under the previous superintendent, Irene Cornish, probably do remember that there was a time and a big push that you were expected to have all your objectives and enduring understanding and things up on the wall. But generally speaking, within your curriculum, the principal generalization would be your enduring understanding. It's the big takeaway, right? And so in this case, a principle of generalization that could go with the unit topic. In this case, we said the conversion of energy creates the power that makes systems function, right? It's kind of a big, broader view. So again, the lower part, topics and facts, are traditionally part of any 2-dimensional curriculum. It's the upper part with concepts, principles, and generalization that we use to elevate it to a concept-based or 3-dimensional curriculum. Like I said, we're going to look at 2 more examples. So as we're looking at it, again, keep thinking about what in your mind differentiates the things at the concept and generalization level versus the fact level at the bottom. So the second example, start out with a topic, emergency services. This is something that would definitely come up. I think we actually pulled this from one of the units in one of the medical careers topics. And so, of course, you're going to have a lot of associated facts that go in with that. In this case, CPR, laceration, incision, abrasion, convulsion, hemorrhage, triage. And understanding what all of these things mean is important in understanding the different breadth and depth of different emergency services. The concepts that we're putting forward that would probably be appropriate, I think in some cases we actually pulled these from the units that already exist, although they're not highlighted or labeled that way. So we pulled out stress, pain, communication, and disease. And then a principle or generalization. Stress may exacerbate the development of a disease. So big picture idea that if a student goes through to a unit on emergency services, you would want them to come up with something. And again, if we didn't hit the target perfectly, we apologize, but just sort of giving an example of, that might not be the big takeaway, but that's where your expertise will come in your areas to determine what is it we want our kids to come away with. And the last example we're going to put up is, this one is outside of CTE. This is more, I think this is come at from like a social studies type example. Japanese earthquake and tsunami, that's the topic. Certain facts to know about, what happened, nuclear materials leaked, 2011 citizens of Japan experienced an earthquake, a tsunami, and then some concepts. And then the big takeaway for the generalization. So what we're going to do next is we're going to look at a few slides where I'm going to invite you to turn to a neighbor and share a few ideas. And I think we do that, I think it's 3 times, but one of them is pretty quick. So if we start out at the bottom layer of the structure of knowledge, we have topics and facts. And I guess, you know, in this case, I'm not going to do a turn and talk for this slide because that's the more traditional, straightforward part. So topics, specific, locked in time and place, they do not transfer to one thing. And then facts, they provide support for everything above it. Right? It's those smaller pieces. And I don't think we need to spend too much time defining topics and facts because in general you're probably used to teaching a topic and probably used to asking students to know facts about certain things. So the next one is concept. So if you would take a moment and turn to someone near you about what you were noticing about the difference, in your own words, in your own thoughts, what was the difference between the facts on some of those previous examples versus the pieces we were putting in the concept layer, and see if there's anything that comes out. But again, take about 30 seconds if you would, and just talk to somebody nearby.
Can you put back one of the slides?
Yeah, so you put back one?
Yep, you can do that.
Well, I didn't know COVID.
No, okay. So like, if we're talking like, if we're talking like topic, it's the pyramid, like the facts support the topic. Even though you know what the topic is first, you almost reverse engineer to like, okay, what are the facts about this? And then you go topic, and then like, okay, well, what's the concept we want to learn, and then kind of like that.
Supporting detail for the concepts. Oh.
I remember chicken flesh when I was like, learning how to write back in high school. I had a main idea and 3 supporting details. To this day, when I write, I still write that way.
Exactly.
But this is just a different, you know, it might not be 3, it might be 7, it might be 5, whatever it is. Pick it up, number.
I also noticed that the vocabulary was concepts. In this case, no, but in the other case it was all
Yes, I noticed that as well. It wasn't reinventing the wheel on each level.
No.
And it makes sense, because that's what makes sense to the kids as well.
All right, we'll come back together in about 10 seconds.
Well, aren't we brilliant?
Yes.
I feel good. Too bad I can't sit in a chair. Yes.
Are you?
Distracted on his poor chair.
All right, so is there anyone that would like to share either something that they noticed or something that someone shared with you when you were doing your turn and talk? As a difference between the sort of the concept level and the fact level. Yes?
I just noticed my initial was that all the concept, I'm just going to use the term vocabulary words because they were words, are all included in the generalization.
So you notice the concepts are included in the
In that
generalization
statement,
in each
yeah.
case, okay? I heard good conversations. Yes?
We also noticed that the facts were sort of like the building block of the topic, and that you needed to kind of use the facts. I know we said figure out the topic, but the facts definitely supported the topic.
Mm-hmm.
So we noticed that was in the examples very apparent.
Okay. And how would that be different from the concepts then? Like that? Sure. I know you guys really
Because
good
the
at
concept could be applied to other situations.
other situations. Can you say a little more about that?
Can you go back to the
Sure.
slide?
Let's go back to like this one.
Well, the concept is natural disasters caused by forces of nature. So the Japanese earthquake is one example of how that happens. But then the students can go and find out, well, what other natural disasters occur and what happens and how is that impacting people's lives.
Got it. And that's, you would say that's a little different from the facts below. Is that,
The facts serve as an example,
got it. Thank you.
that to me.
Okay. Did you have something?
The fact servings is as an example, but it's also like a specific time and place for it, so it's not as relevant as time progresses. So like, as you have other natural disasters that can cause economic hardship, that can be a new fact that'll be more pronounced as you continue to see trends.
Got it. Wow. I like it. All right, now we will look at, I think you guys were actually really good. So we're going to look at concepts, and again, all the things you're saying were right on the money. Now we're going to look at the official definition. I think you're going to see a lot of pieces of what you were talking about in there. So no one said mental constructs drawn from the topic, but I think that's really not the big picture piece. The talk, when you were saying about how they transfer to other areas, right? They're not locked into that one unit. And then the official definition is one or two words or a small phrase. There's a little wiggle room there. They're timeless, they're universal, and they're abstract. So like what sorry, is it Katie? What Katie was saying is that I think you hit on that timeless piece, right? Like the other pieces are sort of locked in and become less relevant over time, whereas ideas like natural disaster are unfortunately eternal, right? They're always there. And then abstract to different degrees, right? So I think if we're talking about, trying to come up with things on the spot, that's always difficult, but if we were talking about like a crankshaft, that's not really abstract. It's not really, like it's a thing, it exists for a purpose, it's sort of locked in, it doesn't really transfer. Whereas energy is something that is very abstract and transfers. So I realized, I think we don't need to do another turn and talk, because I think we got to this point. So based on some of the things you were saying, the generalization, I think everybody was sort of nodding and went with the statement that it's built, it incorporates the concepts in it, right? You notice that it's built in. So that's exactly it. So it's two or more concepts. It does have to be multiple concepts within the same unit. Could be more though, but it doesn't have to be limited to two. Stated a sentence of relationship, and of course, also you want it to transfer across time. And like many of you were saying, supported by the facts. So like, that's what I said. Everything you guys were saying perfectly illustrates this. So you're getting it. You're right on board right now. So I think at this point, I'll be turning it over to Joanna, and she'll be talking about the other structure.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking for a few moments about how is process structured. So there's two different components, and I'm going to show you a visual. So you'll see that Lynn Erickson is credited with the structure of knowledge, and Lois Lanning is credited with the structure of process. The reality is we're going to show you both of them, and you're going to be thinking about both of them in your curriculum writing, but you're not actually going to have to label them separately in your curriculum. So it's just really an awareness and another way of thinking about the ideas to help you kind of get your brain flowing as you're thinking about this. They are complementary processes, and typically ELA, world language, art, and music tend to rely more heavily on the structure of process, but I think you're going to see some areas where some of your subject areas also rely on many of the processes as well. Okay, so in this particular example, we have some strategies and skills. So we have questioning and clarifying, we have how to ask a question or the types of questions, and this is part of the reading process. So we have the reading process, the strategies are questioning and clarifying, and the skills are how to ask a question or types of questions. And this example, while it is drawn from ELA, I mean, your students are using the reading process in anything they're reading in your classes, so they're using the same process. The concepts might be background knowledge, inference, and text evidence. And the generalization is the student understands that. And that phrase, we've put it in this slide, you haven't seen it everywhere. You can keep that in the back of your head because it will help you write generalizations. The student understands that. What do you want them to conclude? And in this particular case, readers make inferences about characters using background knowledge and text evidence. Just so you all know, reader is a concept. And so this is one example, and just like what Harold did, giving you some examples, and then we'll talk about what do you notice about process, strategies, and skills. On another note, just before I forgot to say, we are going to give you a copy of this PowerPoint. The reason we haven't is because if you notice, we're giving you the examples, we're asking you to draw the conclusions. We don't want anyone running ahead to the examples. The whole part of the point of concept-based curriculum is you're giving a lot of different examples and asking your students to draw the conclusions. We are trying to model that same kind of process in what we're doing today. So there's one example for you. And here's the second example. And again, this is from literacy. We have the comprehension process. We have comparison, which is the strategy, and some skills would be summarized to text, note similarities, note differences. And again, you've probably seen students do this in your classes as well. You may have different concepts, readers, reasons, claim, text, evidence, multiple viewpoints. I'm thinking at Stratford High where you have the SARO, claim, evidence, reasoning, and link. You know, this ties to that as well. And again, notice there's no STEM here, but it's just a helpful frame. And readers investigate evidence or reasoning from multiple points of view on a topic to develop a strong claim. And I'll just give you a moment to look. So I'm going to ask a similar question to what Harold asked and sort of have you turn and talk about what do you notice about process, strategies, and skills. Here's another example. We wanted to not just give you literacy. Here's an example from art. And the process is drawing. Here, the strategies accurately represent distance or depth. These are size, space, value, and horizon line. Concepts. And then an example of a generalization. So I'll leave that up while I ask you to turn and talk to a neighbor and just what are you noticing about process, strategies, skills, similarities, differences, your thinking on that at this point. So I'm hearing lots of good thinking and want to give you a chance to share. So what are some of your thoughts about processes, strategies, skills? We'll start with process. What are you noticing about process?
Is process how you're going to demonstrate the skill? That's what I see.
I'm trying to model what Harold's doing and not respond and then,
Well,
because we want your thinking. It's not really
Okay, so
anything
I'm going
that's
to say process is the way of demonstrating the skill because I'm going to use drawing as a way to demonstrate demonstrate space, size, line. Yes, no?
You're going to see it all. Okay, so, I mean, this is the hard part, right? Because we're trying to let everyone have space to think and to have their thinking heard without the value judgment. Yeah, go for it.
I kind of thought of process is sort of the roadmap to whatever the goal is. In this case, it's the principal generalization. I kind of thought it is as the road that you travel in order to gain the understanding or the knowledge in order to complete this overall concept.
I'm gonna take his same analogy. I actually think the process might be the vehicle you're using to get there.
On the road, in the rainstorm.
Hail.
Oh, I know. Hopefully we don't have too much of that today. Any other thinking before I kind of, you're all on the right track. Yes, I know, yes. I'll use a different vehicle so I think the answer to all of you is yes, right. Everything you have said is yes. So, we're giving you the textbook definition, but obviously, everything you've said is on this track. So then I'm going to ask you, and just want to click ahead, strategies and skills. What are your thoughts on those? Go for it.
For the skills, it's basically like the facts, but it's not just knowing about what a horizon line is, it's applying it. So it's applying the facts to what you're trying to get to for the process.
Other thoughts? Alright, this. So here we go. So the strategies are their plan. So you adopt it to get to the results, and the skills are the smaller actions that allow that to happen, which is effectively what you were saying. She's like, wait, it was? I was like, yes. I mean, you have to have that. You have to know your strategies, and that is your plan, your roadmap, and all those little pieces. So if you think about, like, back to that other one about comprehension, if you're going to use comparison, you have to know how to summarize. You have to know how to note similarities. You have to know how to note differences. All of those are components of comparison. The same kind of thing, with your drawing. You have to have a use of space or size in order to accurately represent distance. There are no questions. I'm going to hand it over to Harold.
Yeah, I struggle to wrap my mind around the process side a lot too, to be honest. I generally go toward the structure of knowledge, although process is where Joanna's been, like, the world she's been living in for, like, the entire time, because it's all ELA based, or it has its roots in ELA, I should say. Thinking about CTE, the one area I think of, and maybe I don't understand it that well, that when we were saying this before, that I link to process standards in culinary. Because, right, there's like a process for constructing the meal, and like there's all these little skills like how to dice, right? That's a skill, how to dice. But then it's like, okay, now that I've diced this stuff, what do I do next? Like having that strategy of, I gotta cook this, but I gotta cook this first because it takes a lot longer, and I gotta do that second. Like, you can't just memorize that, right? Like, speaking from personal experience, because I've been on quite a journey since COVID started about learning how to cook. But anyway, enough about that. So we'll go into just going back again, talking about, bless you, reiterating, we had an intro, now we want to just go a little bit further about what is the concept and how does it apply to generalizations and understandings. So this is just one long laundry list of examples of what could be considered concepts. Just give a moment for you to take a look. One thing that I'd throw in there is that you might notice, just trying to find a good question to ask to bring it forward, but there's really no way to ask it without giving the answer, so I'll just go right to that. You might notice that the different concepts on here don't all have the same level of transferability, right? So for example, one of the dead center, linear equations, right? Linear equations they exist. The way we write them with symbols is a human invention, but that doesn't stop the fact that linear relationships and equations exist outside of human beings. But that's not really as transferable as perhaps teamwork, right? Which is like transferable across everywhere, right? Collaboration, power. So in the vernacular of concept-based curriculum instruction, we differentiate those by calling them micro concepts versus macro concepts. And it's important to think about that because I think when people first start with CBCI, with concept-based curriculum instruction, one of the first things is like, okay, we're going to sit down, we're going to do a topic, you guys will practice this a little bit later. We're going to start coming up with ideas and concepts, and everybody wants to shoot for the moon, right? They want this giant generalization and concept that can like transcend every grade and topic and everything. And you don't have to do that, right? It's really good to have some of those bigger picture ones, those macro concepts, but don't forget the micro concepts. The micro concepts might only transfer within your area, but as long as it's transferable and timeless and abstract, then it still qualifies as a concept. So it takes a little time to get used to that. So don't feel like you've got to sit there pining away to figure out what is this giant generalization, huge macro concept all the time. You want most curriculum, Lois and Lynn recommend having a mix. You want some macro and some micro. We already talked, just refreshing this very quickly. Oh, is the quiz on the next one? I think it is, right? Okay, so now we have a quiz, all right? I guess we'll do maybe a formative assessment technique of just hand signals on this one. So we're going to have, as I click, we're going to bring up different words, right? And the question is it a concept or a topic? So I guess You're gonna have to have two symbols. We do thumbs up if you're saying it's a concept. And by the way, just like we do with the students, oh, you want to do a C? Okay, C and T, that's fine. Actually, that's a great idea. So if you're saying that the thing that comes up is there's a little humor in this too, so don't worry, it's not make or break. A concept, you just put up a C, and a topic, you put up a T, and just like we do with students, so that we don't like out them in front of everybody, if you just want to do that like right in front of you so nobody can see what you're holding up, feel free, that's fine. All right, so our first one is, and I think we drew as many of these as possible from as many broad CTE areas as we could. We started with this one. So we have
I haven't seen that word in 30 years.
All right.
I think that's the concept.
Well, we've got a mix of answers. All right, so I can see that we're kind of split on this one. Some of you saying topic, some of you saying concept. And so the key that I would go to is how transferable is amniocentesis outside of the particular unit of study that you're looking at, right? Not really transferable. It's a very specific thing. Okay, and the hint is, we might have said this purposefully, the next one is growth. So for growth, and just to go back, yes, amniocentesis in this lens would be, generally speaking, be considered a topic, just because it's so focused, narrow, and locked. So the next one is growth. Got some, just everybody. All right, so it looks like we have pretty broad consensus, although some of you have a backwards C. Feel like it's right for me. That it is growth. So growth would be a concept, right? Growth is going to exist. It's going to be timeless. It's going to be universal, somewhat abstract. Growth is something that it's very transferable. Next one, zoom lens. Put this one in for Lou. So would a zoom lens on a camera be considered a topic or a concept? All right, so we have a lot of agreement here, and the consensus is correct. It is a topic. So because it is such a very narrow thing that you'd be looking at, an object, so to speak, that has a very specific function, it would be considered a topic. Could also be, I guess it would be a fact, but zoom lens is not a fact, right, Lou? No. No, okay. Perspective. Perspective.
Yeah, that's there.
All right, so you guys are getting much faster at this. Okay. And once again, the consensus is correct. That would be a concept. And the reason is that, perspective is going to go outside. So whereas if Lou is teaching about perspective in video production, that would be very different from an English teacher talking about perspective in a novel. But they both talk about perspective in this generally transferable idea.
We do not talk about zoom lenses generally speaking.
No zoom lenses in Catcher in the Rye. Is that?
We're going to talk about lens. Then lens would be a concept.
Lens.
So if the lens, the point of view, but we wouldn't necessarily, zoom lens is a particular item, but we would talk about lenses, which could make that a concept if you're just at the lens in front of it.
Just the lens. Distribution. People are getting braver and braver, like holding their hands up higher now. They're like, okay, I think I got this. All right, the consensus is correct. That would be generally speaking, because it's distribution, that would be a concept. Now, if we added a word in front of that, like economic distribution, or, it's possible if you narrow it down in scope, if you're thinking about distribution as like shipping and manufacturing, you could narrow it down to the point where it would be a topic, but just as it stands right now, it would generally be a concept. We talked about distribution in math class now that I think about it, and probably in economics, and social studies, depending on what you're distributing. Chef's knife. All right, I put that one in there just to show, very good. So that would be a topic. Chef's knife especially is just, even knife itself would probably still be a topic. That's not very
We did use some words from your curriculum.
Yeah. Nutrition.
It could be both, depending on the lens.
Let's see, so most of you are holding up a C. Casey's still kind of like, So in this lens, we would say nutrition would be considered a concept. it is broadly transferable, but I guess in this case, that gets back to that micro versus macro, right? I think this is more of a micro concept versus a macro concept, right? That's what I mean though. Everybody wants to shoot for perspective, growth, right? The stuff that's like, you could talk about this in any class. But nutrition is a micro concept that does cross over science, it crosses over culinary, it crosses over health. It might not be quite as broad as something like growth, just as an example. The accounting formula.
That's here.
Oh, we're very split on this.
I have never really used that formula.
Yeah, I know.
No, but
No.
but you could use it in different parts of accounting though. You could use that in just normal, the stuff I hate, the journal entries. You could do it in cost accounting. You could do it in any other discipline in accounting. It is transferable within
So
accounting.
then
But
it's,
it's not
go back to what he's
transferable
saying,
to-
that it's a
this-
micro.
to micro.
Yeah, it's.
We could just sit back now. So again, this is where Joanne and I are saying we are deferring to the fact that we are not experts in all the CTE areas. The way we were reading how it was treated in the curriculum, we would consider that to be a topic. Although, depending on how it's treated in formula, formula would definitely be a concept, right? Formula is broadly
Right,
accessible.
but putting the accounting in front of it
It-
makes
yeah,
it more
she-
specific.
It does.
Especially because it says the accounting formula, which if you're talking about like one particular kind of formula, that's also what would generally make it more specific. But if it's a
I
broader
can see that.
concept, that there's something beyond it.
Like accounting might be considered more of a concept, right? But when you say the accounting formula, it gets a little bit narrow. However, we're not going to stand here and pretend we are experts in all the CTE areas. We're not here to debate or tell you you're right or wrong. It's just sort of to get the general idea of what, So sometimes it's a little tricky to go down when you get down to that micro concept level. Is it a micro concept? Is it a topic? And at a certain point, it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, it matters, but the point of this isn't to like start arguments. So that was really cool. That was an argument. That was a really cool debate, and watching like immediately like claim evidence reading happening right in front of us. But when you're doing the curriculum, you're going to have to make the call, right? You're just going to have to say we are going to consider this as a group. We'll consider this a concept, and we'll treat it as such. Right?
There's different parts to the formula.
Yeah.
There can be multiple parts to a topic, or it doesn't.
Like when you use balance sheet, you use the accounting formula as the basis to do that.
I almost wonder if maybe it falls more in the line of like thinking about the structure of the process.
Yes, it does.
Right?
That's
Process,
why
strategy,
this is
skills,
hard.
the balance sheet
Yeah.
being one skill, but it
Right.
makes up other.
It's like a strategy.
So we have another one, trade. Trade. Also sort of in that same area of economics, I guess. So I see pretty broad agreement that this would be a concept.
Yeah, that's.
Or backwards C. I'm not sure what you guys mean by that. But, no, this is the right C. This is the backwards C.
Yeah, the right hand is.
So yeah, the trade, that's one of those macro concepts, right? I think. Early childhood education today, 11th edition. That one's there as a joke, so obviously something that's that specific, that locked in time and space would not be a concept. It's not really even a topic either, so we can move on from that. Okay. What? Oh. What did I just do? Okay, what? Oh, hold on, I wrote myself a note for what I'm supposed to do at that moment.
So maybe this is actually telling us, because
Yes.
looking at the time, so why don't we take like a 5-minute, because everyone I can see is freezing, so if you'd like to walk out of this room for a few minutes to get warm, and then we'll come back and finish. So, I can see everyone like this, so I'm assuming there's warmth there, I don't know for sure.
All right, we're actually coming back from a little stretch break. We're going right into a small activity. Earlier, we handed out copies of the Portrait of a Graduate to everyone. And what we'd like you to do at this time, to sort of link that back, Katie might not have gotten one, to link what we're doing right now to sort of the big picture of the district and the portrait work that really guides all of the curriculum development and the direction that we're going. is take a look at the portrait document that you've got and see if you can identify, maybe in about 1 to 2 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, try to identify concepts that you see within this document, whether it's under Collaborate or Lifelong Learner, wherever you want. Because ideally, if we're doing everything right, if we're looking long-term, we should see a lot of transferable concepts right here within this document itself. So if you wanted to take a moment, you can feel free to mark it up. It's your copy. All right. Would anyone like to share maybe a concept or two that you maybe resonated with you or that you picked out from the words? Yes.
I said awareness and acceptance.
Okay, awareness, acceptance, and were those in the communicator area or?
Compassionate and engaged community member.
Got it. Yeah, I just noticed that awareness is also in communicator. Like it transferred right in there. Awareness, acceptance. Got it. Also, any others, Jim?
This is kind of, you came out, this is coming from the marketing guy. Audience awareness.
Audience awareness. So that awareness, that piece there. Anything
In
else?
terms of like leadership, I was thinking about kids going to the competition, participating in the game in the classroom.
Yeah, leadership is definitely very transferable. At least we hope it is, right?
Can we separate some words?
What's that?
Can we separate a word?
Yeah,
Like advocacy, there's a self-advocacy, but advocacy is.
right. So you can modify some of these if you want to make them more transferable. Advocacy versus self-advocacy, because you could be advocating for others. Anything else?
In terms of the community members, like we're always bringing in guest speakers in our various classes, and sometimes the students reach out to the people that come in and get internships or volunteer in their company or organization.
Right, so you can already see links between your curricular areas and the portrait of the graduate, and even better, the concepts within the portrait of the graduate, all links together. That's kind of what we're hoping we would see. So that's a very good thing. All right, so I am going to now turn this back over to Joanne, and you'll be leading us through our next portion. Thank you.
So one of the other things to think about too is that some of these concepts can also have strategies and skills underneath them. So if you look at something that's not quite a concept here, but there are strategies and skills like we were talking about with the structure of process built into the portrait, those are there. As I know everyone's getting distracted by the enduring understandings or generalizations. So if you noticed, we're using both terms because our curriculum has used the term generalization, it's used enduring understandings, they mean the same thing. So you'll hear us use them interchangeably, so don't get confused. So what this is a reference back to 4 enduring understandings, 4 generalizations that you have seen so far today. And we just want you to take a moment and just talk about what do you notice about how these are written? What stands out to you? We've talked about what a concept is, so it may be helpful to kind of look and think about what are the concepts there, and then think about what do you notice about how they are written, these enduring understandings. I'm going to give you a moment to think for yourself and then ask you to kind of turn to a partner and share your thinking. So when you're ready, just talk to a partner about what are you noticing about how these are written, because not only are you going to be pulling out concepts, but you will be writing these. So what do you notice?
Yeah, I was like, one kind of leads to the other without, I was thinking cause and effect,
Yeah.
but it of course may not be.
Purpose.
natural disasters lead to the economic hardship.
Something as a result of something else.
Yeah, yeah. A leads to B.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where my head is. Right.
So it looks like we're ready to share some thinking. So what are you thinking? What have you noticed?
It's in sentence format, and it's like the big takeaway that you want them to get, a couple of concepts in each sentence.
Okay, so 3 different things. Sentence format, a couple of concepts in each sentence, and the big takeaway that you want students to have. What other thinking?
They're affirmative statements.
So elaborate a little, please.
Do you want me to say it?
Yeah, go ahead. All yours.
Something causes something else. Something is a result of something else. So I guess that allows students to connect.
Yeah, so you're noticing a relationship.
Yeah, here, thank you.
Go for it.
You did it in one word.
Each subject's given an action verb, so it's not like it's like a passive thing about it has done this or whatever, or something happens to it. It's that readers investigate natural disasters, disrupt. So it's like action versus power.
So it's action. So that goes into what you were saying too about the affirmative. So it's the action. There's something that's being done rather than something that's being done to someone
Right.
or something or some concept. Any other thoughts? So a lot of what you've just said is summarized in the next few slides. That there are 2 or more concepts as stated as a sentence and in a relationship. So you've said that, right? The reason they're like that is because it allows students to transfer. Again, that deep understanding. So that goes to what you're saying about the big ideas. What do we want students to get to? There's multiple concepts. If you do not have 2 concepts, at least you could have more than 2, then you do not have a generalization or a knowing understanding. And we say that not only for curriculum writing, but also when you're teaching and you're trying to get students to say these generalizations. If they don't have 2 or more concepts, they also don't have a relationship in some way. They also don't have a generalization. Going along with some of what you've just said, they're the summaries of thought. What do I understand as a result of my study? What's transferring? So what is the big idea, as was said, was the big takeaway. And the goal is we teach to this. We teach kids to think this way. Can they draw their own conclusions and make their own generalizations? Because when they can do that, they really understand what you've taught them because they've taken it beyond just your course. So this is something that sometimes people push a little back at. Wait, we don't write them, we don't give them to students. Isn't that mean? It's not mean. What we're doing is we're trying to get them to come up with their own. So you may need to scaffold or support a kid to get there, but as you're developing, as you're teaching your unit, you're writing the concepts that kids are generally generating. The first time you may need to show them, how do I write a generalization? You're not going to say, students, write a generalization, and I'm not going to give you any model or any example. But the idea is we give kids questions so that the generalization becomes their answer to that big question. That's them showing you how they've really taken away and given their large ideas. We do write them in the curriculum. That's to guide us as educators, to help us, okay, this is where we're going. But the reality is that sometimes students are going to come up with different generalizations. They will have learned something else and something more than what you thought. And that's okay. Because the big takeaway is we want kids to take these concepts and make them their own, to draw their own conclusions. Okay, so we are going to ask you, we're going to give you this example, and while you're working, I'm going to share the PowerPoint with you. And so what we've done is we've given you some facts. We've given you a strategy, we've given you a topic, which is mythical characters. We've given you purpose, themes, characterizations, which are concepts. And we are going to ask you right now, you can try something on your own first, which is what I recommend, and then share with a partner. write a sentence, write a generalization using this information. Again, I'm going to take a moment to share the PowerPoint with you, so if you want to look back at the other examples, you can. So we'll give you a few more minutes to do this, maybe 3-5 minutes, so that you have a chance to really look at the examples if you need them. The only thing I would ask is if you could just hold off on clicking past this slide. This is slide 33. Don't skip to the next one yet, please.
Yeah, this is not my area of expertise. I think Odysseus is one of the kings of one of the city-states of what became Greece. Helen is the girl that Paris stole from Odysseus and brought to Troy and became Helen of Troy. She was the face that launched 1,000 ships. None of this?
Yes, that is who she was.
That's the right Helen?
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt was Achilles, of course.
So it says compare and contrast.
Wait,
So aren't they,
was that Troy?
Actually, not a bad movie. A little long, but not a bad movie.
so the generalization would be, okay, so all 4 of those people are Greek characters. What is it?
We need like a little lesson.
So looking at the concepts, so the topics, the facts are there to just give you topics and the facts are the foundational knowledge. The concepts are what we use to write the generalization. So that might help you.
2 or more of those words, the concepts have to be in the generalization.
Correct. In a relationship. That's why I'm sending this to you, so you can kind of take a look.
Yeah, I'm a little lost on this, I gotta be honest. I think it's a gap in my Greek mythology, however.
So it's not, is it Helen of Troy and Medusa?
Or an author's purpose.
Joanna, you are out of our strengths.
Yeah.
We're all in struggle books over here together.
An author's purpose.
So purpose, theme, and characterization is the area of focus for the
Characters
concepts.
can be used to convey purpose.
You could put anything underneath that. Think about purpose, theme, and characterization, because those are the concepts in a relationship. Whether you use mythical characters, whether you use a textbook that you're reading, whether you use some other book, substitute a book or a story that you know really well.
Could you do the purpose of blank? Yeah, so no, like the purpose of themes does something to characterization, because you want to have them linked together, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So the purpose of characterization does something with the themes.
So all 3 of the concepts have to be in statements?
2 or more. So you have to have
Mythical
at least 2 or
characters
more.
are used in literature and have a
Bring in
purpose and
additional
theme.
concepts too if you want.
Well, we got Harold.
Go ahead, Rose. Help it out.
I said mythical characters are used in literature and have a purpose and theme.
But aren't you supposed to use those
To convey purpose.
So were you supposed to do something?
Actually, I'll just comment on that one.
Well, those are
The word
facts.
used, right? We would want a stronger verb than that, right? Like that A does B cause effect, right? And there's actually a list of words that are
Next
like,
slide.
yeah.
So wait,
Because
oh
we'll
wait.
use these words because, if they say something like, well, this influences that. Okay, but how? It needs to be like, does it exacerbate it? Does it drive it up?
Are utilized.
Yeah. Right, so those are the pieces. So I think we're starting to get around it.
So mythical characters are
There's one big concept word that Joanna didn't put in there that I find very helpful, never writing about ELA. There's either readers or writers.
Yeah. You could also, Harold's given you some friendly hints, you could add like readers or writers to the concepts. So the words you're using to form a relationship, purpose, theme, characterization. He's adding for you readers, writers. Those could also be really helpful in terms of forming that generalization. I do think this will be easier in your own areas. So
Well, Odysseus and Jason are both kind of hero characters. Medusa, all I know is she's got like snake hair and turns people into rocks. And Helen was, she was, the face that launched 1,000 ships that started the Trojan War. I don't know, like Helen seems bad, Medusa seems mean, the other two seem nice.
I don't think Helen was bad.
Was that?
I don't think Helen was a bad guy, if I remember correctly.
Well, she started a war. That can't be good.
Well, I think it was actually the guys that were in love with her that started.
Yeah, well.
Indecisiveness.
So basically, a mythological character who creates discord was not invited to a party, and so she threw an apple in instead for the fairest, and 3 women fought over that apple. 3 Greek goddesses fought over the apple, and the one who won promised the most beautiful woman in the world to a young man, and he chose her over power or wealth, and the problem is that Helen was already married. So it's a really tangled web of how that ended up. But again, if you don't know that much about the characters, it actually, you can substitute in any other characters that you would know, because really the idea is those concepts: purpose, theme, characterization. I read books to my kids. You could substitute in the books you read to your kids. It doesn't matter what the facts are, or even what the strategy is. You would substitute those in. Purpose, theme, and characterization. And like I said, Harold was giving you some friendly help with readers and writers, adding those in. That could be another way to look at it. Another way in.
All right, so Katie, you ready for this?
Real big.
Okay. Dr. Seuss, we got a 4-year-old, used the theme of, it's almost prejudice, in order to convince Sam I Am to try the green eggs and ham. So it was...
Peer pressure?
Well, no, hold on. Now you're throwing me off. Because that's absolutely true. It was... now I lost it. There's something there, though. But, the whole idea is hey, he's saying, I'm not trying this. Then all of a sudden he gets him to try it, and hey, guess what? He likes it.
Dr. Seuss actually had a whole bunch of non-child friendly things that he actually discussed in his literature in a child sense.
Yeah.
So what are some examples? We got one example read out loud. Well, I know some of you, I saw you writing. What are some other examples that you had?
I don't think it's very good.
Okay, we're not judging.
He will.
No, I
You can't
won't.
control other individuals, but in this zone, you're non-judgment. Go for it.
The characterization of mythical creatures creates a theme as trends are identified.
Okay, so characterization creates themes.
Yeah.
That's effectively the, so characterization creates themes, and what was the last part you said?
As trends are identified.
As trends are identified. So characterization creates themes.
Yes.
Are there 2 concepts? What are the 2 concepts?
Themes and characterization.
Are they in a relationship?
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a generalization?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, now, you can, as you're working on your generalizations, you may say, oh, this isn't as strong as I want it to be, and I want to change it. So you may say, okay, this was my starting generalization, and I want to tweak that a little bit, I want to edit it or revise it, but is it a generalization? Does it convey the ideas? Yes. Fair? Or you may say, this is exactly it, and, but I say this because as part of your writing process, just understand that you're going to go back and forth. Partly, just write down what you think. That's part of the reason Harold and I are around, to help and provide that support, so that as you're writing, we are available. Any other ideas? Anyone else willing to share, I guess is the question. We've had 2 examples. Okay, go for it.
As the purpose of studying Odysseus and Medusa identifies themes and characteristics common to the creatures. Even as ballpark.
You're going in the right direction. What I would say to you is you're looking at purpose, you're looking at themes, you want to take out the mythical characters and the Medusa. So that's what I would say. You're not, when you're writing a generalization, because it's the bigger idea of how does it go beyond, the examples are used in your mind to help you draw the conclusion. So your thinking is that, right, you're starting your thinking on paper, and you're just, okay, how can I rewrite this so that I don't put in the specific examples, but still have the same idea? So that's what, and Scott, that's what I would say to you too. Like, your idea of characterization and theme and an author trying to say a larger purpose, you would just take out the exact examples that you're
Okay.
using and create, both of you. Just pull out your examples and make your sentence with just the concepts.
Okay.
Other example, like an author's use of characterization develops the theme and purpose of a text. I'll give you that other example. Or a strong characterization leads readers to an author's purpose and theme. Okay, again, none of these are any better, or they're just other examples, and they're all valid. A lot of you are getting them. Now, we're not spending a ton of time on like characterization. If you were going to write English versions, we'd spend more time. But this is just a chance for you to get your feet a little wet to have a conversation. Because we're going to do, this is what Harold was referring to. As you're writing, there's just a couple of things. Go for it, sorry. I'm taking over Harold's slides.
So this is just some guidance, and Joanna talked about it a little bit. So the first one, no proper personal nouns. So like Dr. Seuss, we would not include into that piece. No pronouns in the sentence, are, we, they. You're trying to make this as transferable as possible, so we don't want to personalize it. Present tense verb is very important, but see in the red, that's sort of what I was getting at. You want to avoid very weak verbs that don't show a directional relationship. So impacts, influences, yes, but in which way? How is it impacted? Positively, negatively? Already talked about, has to have at least 2 concepts, which I think all of you nailed, right, in your examples you were going through. And supported by the factual, I think that last piece, second to last one, transferable idea supported by the factual content. I think when you started, and this is totally normal, you were trying to get the factual content pieces into the generalization, right? Focus on Odysseus, focus on Helen, focus on Troy, the Odyssey, whatever. Where you want to use them to guide your thinking, as Joanna said, but don't actually put them into the generalization itself, because that takes away from its transferability. And the last part is just sort of to give yourself a break, that you can use qualifiers if they're necessary. If there's something that's often true, typically true, like I think you saw one about stress, right? That increased stress may exacerbate a disease, right? It doesn't always exacerbate a disease, but it might be something that's important that you want your students to know. So you would include that as a generalization. Good. I think I just had that slide, right?
Yeah.
There we are.
So we're actually at the end of today, and we didn't quite get to the chance of writing our generalizations with the curriculum, but that is going to be your homework, and so it's important for a couple of things. There's a timesheet link. You will make a copy, so you need to fill out your timesheet not only for today, but also for the work you're doing as homework, so that this is part of that curriculum writing, part of that PD. Dr. Gator, should they be sending it to you?
I think we have it.
You already got it, right?
Okay.
Last week.
Okay, so it's also here. And then, so what we're asking you to do for homework and to come prepared with the next meeting is to identify, take one course, okay? Start with one course that you're planning to write and look at potentially 3 to 5 concepts in each unit in that course. So don't try to do 20 courses, okay? You'll make yourself not happy. And then see if you can write 1 to 2 draft generalizations for each unit. So it should be a little bit easier because you're in your wheelhouse, so you just practice with something you're not as familiar with. Do not worry if it doesn't come out perfect. So this is what we're sort of here to help you with, is to have you start it, to draft it, to work with you on it. We've been doing this a while, and I don't know, it took us a while to come up with some of the generalizations, and we have experience doing it. So it's not something that, sometimes you're gonna get it, like, oh, there it is, it came to me right away. But sometimes you're gonna say, okay, what do I really mean here? How do these two terms work together? And what I hope kids got from it. And again, the reminder at the bottom to keep track of your time on the timesheet so you get paid for also your homework hours. Everyone at this point, unless I made a mistake, should have a read-only copy of the PowerPoint. We're going to, end the presentation, end the recording, but if anyone didn't get it for some reason, just come see Harold or me and we'll make sure that you're on it, because I was not intending to leave anybody off. Next meeting is up in L. We are in, Harold, do you have B? I'm forgetting which room number, but it is on the,
B110.
thank you, B110. It's on the calendar invitation. We asked the principals what spaces we could use, and that was the space we were given up in L. So that must be a good room for a presentation, I'm guessing, with a projector. We thank you for joining us today, and we're looking forward to seeing you all next time.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.